All right, it's officially 6 o'clock. It's that time. So instead of happy hour, we're here. Thank you for being here. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your attendance. So I'd like to officially call this meeting to order. And if you would please call our roll. I'm here.
Gavahi,
Available.
Commissioner Dillon,
Here.
Commissioner Noble, Commissioner Connolly,
Here.
Commissioner Marr,
Here.
Commissioner LaRue.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. This time is our time for public comment. We, of course, welcome public participation. At this moment, if you'd like to address the Planning Commission for any item that is not on tonight's agenda, you're welcome to do so. We would like you to limit those comments to 3 minutes, please. And when you step up to the microphone, please speak clearly and provide us with your name and address before bringing up your topic. So if anyone has anything to say that's not related to our agenda tonight, please feel free to do so at this time.
Tom Edwards, District 1 resident. The one topic I have is that you might want to take a look at allowing bicycles parking as counting for car parking. So when we do developments, and you have a development, I'm not talking about any specific one, I'm just talking in general, and you have 12 units, you should have a parking space for every unit, but if you've gotten 6 bicycle parking spaces, then you only have half that. So I just don't see where we should be counting bicycle parking as regular parking spaces. And my recommendation is to make a recommendation to the community development group that change in the ordinance. The other thing is some of these developments don't have enough parking. I mean, they don't provide for employee parking. So that should also be taken into parking when you have developments. And then the other thing is there's an ordinance that says that if you have another building maybe 150 feet away, correct me if I'm wrong on that, Jenny, that you can count that as some of the parking for on-site parking when it's actually quite a distance away from the parking. So that would be my recommendation, that they might consider making changes in the ordinance to that effect, because it's important to have adequate parking, and some of these things that are coming up, I don't think they do.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Got a few notes on that. Thank you. Okay, anyone else would like to say anything not related to a specific item on our agenda? All right. In that case, we'll move along. Mr. Trask, do I need to do the quasi-judicial statement? Okay. For any quasi-judicial hearings that might be on the agenda, an affected person may become a party to this proceeding and can be entitled to present evidence at the hearing, including the sworn testimony of witnesses and relevant exhibits and other documentary evidence, and to cross-examine all witnesses by filing a notice of intent to be a party with the Community Development Director not less than 5 days prior to the hearing. Okay? So at this time, would like to have approval of the minutes, if anyone is so inclined. From last meeting, obviously, that is.
Motion to approve the minutes from last meeting.
Okay, thank you, John. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Hoosh. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Marr,
Yes.
Commissioner Gavahi,
Yes.
Commissioner Connolly,
Yes.
Commissioner Dillon,
Yes.
Commissioner LaRue,
Yes.
Chairman Wyckoff.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The minutes are approved. We have nothing under, oh, nope, sorry, I almost skipped what we're here, one of the things we're here for. We'll go to new business right now. We have one item under new business. Item A, the Sanderling Site Plan, 13495 Gulf Boulevard. Our city, please.
So, Mr. Chair, if I can just give you a little bit of background on this one before we go ahead and get started.
Please.
There's a process that we need to follow. I want to bring to your attention that there are 2 notices of intent for people to become affected parties. I know I'm going to butcher this name, and I apologize in advance. Daniel Zuwala. Did I get that right? Thank you. And then Paul Byam. They've each filed their notices of intent. A summary of the application is that this is a site plan application to build a 4-story building with 8 transient logic units and ancillary commercial retail at the property located at 13495 Gulf Boulevard here in Madeira Beach. The standards to be applied are those that are referenced in the staffing, that's section 110-48 and 110-51. The burden of proof is the greater weight of the evidence as set forth in section 2-10 of your code. In identifying the parties, they are Jack Bodziak on behalf of the Sanderling application, the City of Madeira Beach, Mr. Zuala, and Mr. Byam. The order of presentation pursuant to your code is that the applicant will go first, then the city, then Mr. Zuala and Mr. Byam. I'm going to go ahead and read the quasi-judicial procedures that we have to follow at the hearing today. This is a quasi-judicial proceeding where the Board of Commissioners acts in a quasi-judicial rather than a legislative capacity. At this quasi-judicial hearing, it is not the board's function to make law, but rather to apply law that has already been established. In this quasi-judicial hearing, the board is required by law to make findings of fact based upon the evidence presented at the hearing and apply those findings of fact to previously established criteria contained in the Code of Ordinances in order to make a legal decision regarding the application before it. The board may only consider evidence at this hearing that the law considers competent, substantial, and relevant to the issues. If the competent, substantial, and relevant evidence at the hearing demonstrates that the applicant has met the criteria established in the Code of Ordinances, then the board is required by law to find in favor of the applicant. By the same token, if the competent, substantial, and relevant evidence at the hearing demonstrates that the applicant has failed to meet that criteria established in the Code of Ordinances, then the board is required by law to find against the applicant. At this time, I need to ask each one of you whether you've had any ex parte communications with the applicant. No, I'm not seeing any hands raised, okay. Are there any conflicts of interest that anyone needs to disclose? I'm not seeing any hands raised, thank you. At this point, I need to swear in the witnesses. Anyone that's going to speak at this hearing, if you can stand up, raise your right hand, I'm going to swear you under oath.
Comment with the folks?
I'm sorry?
I didn't hear it come, is there any public comment?
Yep.
I didn't hear that, sir.
There will,
Are you going to, I'm sorry?
I'm not an affected party, but
Okay, I was listing the order of presentation by the parties. The public will still have the opportunity to speak. If you're going to speak at this hearing, if you can stand up, raise your right hand, and be sworn under oath. You swear that the testimony you're about to give is going to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Okay. So, Mr. Edwards, you said yes as well? Yeah, okay, thank you. All right, at this point, it's time for the applicant to proceed pursuant to the code. I know this is a little bit unusual, but that's what the code requires. Applicant first, then the city staff will make its presentation. That's just the way the code provides.
great, thank you.
Yeah.
Good evening. Jack Bodziak, I'm the architect. I have got my recently acquired partner with me who will put on a bit of a video presentation after I run through some of the facts. I thought I would run through the basics first. I was fortunate enough in the last year to bring Britt Hayes, who was an architect in California. She was with the Frank Gehry firm, and at that time she did the Facebook Center out in Seattle. And if you're familiar with Los Angeles at all, she did the Grand complex down across from the Disney Center, which now is a landmark downtown, a 40-something story multi-complex type thing across from the Disney Theater Center. So I'm pleased to have Britt with me. She's going to walk you through the slides and all that and give you some of the particulars. I'll give you the basic background. We're here about 13495 Gulf Boulevard, which is at the intersection of 135th and Gulf Boulevard. The site is zoned C3 and is approximately 0.23 acres, almost a quarter acre. It was recently the veterinarian's clinic that was moved out of there, and the proposed plan that you'll see tonight was an 8-unit complex, 8 units above a small retail 1,500 square foot space downstairs. The owner could not be here tonight. He had made a presentation the other night to at the neighborhood meeting and made some pretty interesting commitments, among which were that he has no intention of the roof deck being open to the public, none whatsoever. He is primarily if you'll remember the place, the location is next door to the event space that the girls have. Gosh, I'm sorry. We did the building. I forgot the name.
The West Event
The
Center.
West Event, yeah. And he figures that he'll get a certain amount of wedding traffic off of that, but he intends to keep half of the units and sell 4 of the units, which will give him to somewhat continued control. He does not want any, he says, look, there are going to be weddings that come in that will stay at our place and they'll use the rooftop. But he planned on keeping a very strict restriction on noise as far as music, and not to rent, not to do any outside events on the roof. So I know that that was a clear concern at the neighborhood meeting, and I think he attempted to put everybody at rest about that. Other things about the site, it's, as I said, it's zone C3, and it's an AE10 zone. And the way we're laid out, we have the parking on the first level with the retail, small retail space. We have a single elevator going up to 3 units, 3 units, and 2 units. So I call it 3 stories over parking with a roof deck, 3 living floors over parking. That's about it at this point. I think I'll turn it over to Britt and let her walk you through the slides, and look forward to working with you on this.
Hi, my name is Britt Hayes. Happy to be here and share some of our work on the Sanderling. I just acknowledge you to direct the slide through, or was there a... As you know, the site, we're on Gulf Boulevard at 13495. At our neighborhood meeting, we were able to speak with many of the neighbors in the adjacent properties. Everyone seemed to come by that lives locally. Can go on to the next. Thank you. Here you're really just seeing the veterinary center that exists as it is, and the West events on the south end. Next. For the design for this project, obviously we started attempting to understand how much we could fit on this site, what would be appropriate in terms of parking to comply with the codes. We actually studied 9 units but settled on 8 units in this proposal. So as Jack mentioned, we've got 3 units per floor for the first 2 living floors, and then the top level has 2 units, and then there's a deck above. Next. Here's the site plan that shows the lowest floor. So we have about 1,700 square feet of commercial space, 2 bathrooms already shown. There's no tenant yet selected or under contract in any way or discussing this site yet, but the intent would be a small restaurant, or ideally, that's what the owner would like to see here to serve the community, something a little more upscale than is common in this area. Our parking plan, you can see, fits 13 spots plus our bicycle parking. The access is still the same as it currently is generally to the site. You have 1 curb cut on Gulf Boulevard, and you have an access to the alley. It's a one-way alley. So that circulation pattern remains to what is already there. And then it's thought that most people are going to come in, obviously, from the parking level or off Gulf Boulevard. There's an elevator and a stair near the alley at the back. Next. Our landscape plan, we attempted to utilize as much as the site as possible that wasn't going to have parking or our front restaurant space. There's some outdoor seating that's planned, but we're almost providing twice as much buffer in landscape as is required by the code, and we're obviously using native species, things that are, work well at this beach location. And you can see here actually all that landscape planned along the front. 3 large palm trees and sea grape trees are planned along the back and sides, and that kind of outdoor patio at the front. For the design, we were really taking cues from the ocean, bringing in some subtle curves, trying to do something that's distinctive, that's warranted for such a high-profile location and not just, bland architecture. So it should be a special thing to add to the aesthetics of your Gulf Boulevard. Next, please. Still the floor plan at level 1, not much more to discuss here. You can go to the next. Here's a typical floor. So as I said, we actually, by density, could have done larger units, but these are really nice units, a lot of balcony adjacent to them, 2 large bedrooms, meant to be attracting families to the area. And you can skip 2 slides here, I think. The top floor just shows 3 larger bedroom layout, 3 bedrooms for each unit in this configuration. Next. And then here's the roof level that Jack mentioned. There's a couple shade structures to provide cover, a little area for people to prepare their own drinks or food with a couple sinks, and that's about it for the roof deck. And here you can just see that from above, some mechanical space as well. We're trying to buffer that, surrounded by elevator core and bathrooms. And you can go ahead and flip through just a couple more views here of the building. We're trying to take care to develop each side of the building, so we're a friendly neighbor to all views. You can keep going. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else from our applicant? We good? All right. Now the city's turn.
All right, good evening. My name is Jay Stearman, and I'm going to walk through this set of slides that I prepared with staff, and hopefully not be redundant and cover things that have already been covered by the applicant. So here's the location again. I want to just highlight the adjacent land uses and other businesses that are in the area. You can see the Seabreeze, Beach Chill, Inn, Tied the Knot Beach Weddings, the West events, as Jack mentioned before. And these are some views of the existing structure on site. The view from Gulf Boulevard. This is from the corner of the intersection looking southeast. This is from 135th looking south. This is a little bit further back as well. This is the best view of the rear that you're going to be able to see from the existing structure. And so it's in the C3 retail commercial zone, and it's in the ROR future land use district, and it meets the permitted uses. It's currently commercial, and it has a 1 apartment unit upstairs, so it's a vertical mixed use. And the applicant's proposing the temporary lodging and the restaurant cafe, as they discussed before. There's the rendering again. Here's all 4 together. This is the ground floor plan that also shows the dog walking area there on the north side, which is going to be artificial grass. Second, third floor plan, 4th floor plan. This is another view of the roof deck. And this shows the elevation, and that the lowest horizontal member is elevated above DFE per floodplain regulations. And this just walks through some of the standards to get a sense of what's being proposed. You can see the setbacks. We'll talk about those in just a little bit in regards to the variance. And you can see the lot coverage, the impervious area, the proposed green area, and we talked about the height and the density. And this breaks down the air-conditioned space, the biddable space, and the gross floor area as well. So the variance 2024-03 was granted towards the end of April of this year, and what it did is applied one to the rear and side setback, and as well as a granted relief from some of the landscape buffer requirement. So the rear setback was pushed to 6.5 feet, which is a reduction of existing structures nonconformity, as well as the side setback along 135th Ave was set to 6 foot. And then the landscape buffer, you can see here, the locations exactly of where this variance applied to. It was really to accommodate the parking spaces there on the alley side in order for them to fit in. And then you can see here that the dumpster was screened as well. And so that vertical wall from that dumpster, that is what is encroaching in the required setback. So really, that rear setback is really just to accommodate that screening wall around the dumpster. And here's a closer view of the setback on 135th Avenue. And you could see on the right side there, that's the survey of the existing structure, which shows a 4.8-foot clearance. And on the left side, you can see the comparison between the existing structure's setback and what the variance granted. And you can see that's also a reduction in nonconformity compared to the existing structure. Going on to the project scope review. So the lot size, the setbacks, the coverage, all of that meets the code. And same applies to the arrangement of structures. The impact on the surrounding property reflects the adjacent usage along Gulf Boulevard where it's fronting. The floodplain regulations have been met. The parking has been met as well. And the only thing that's different from what you see here is that the ADA compliant parking, the access ramp that's depicted on the civil plans, staff is doubtful that that's going to conform to federal standards. So that's something that the applicant will have to rework and see if that can be brought into compliance. But as we talked about, the traffic access has been met as well. Same goes for the soil and water resources and the drainage plan. And the landscaping as well meets and exceeds many of our standards as well. And also references the variance that we discussed. The irrigation system as well will be reclaimed if possible. And further on, it actually meets the tree protection standards as well as the lighting. All the lighting will be sea turtle compliant where applicable. It is visible from the beach side, so having sea turtle compliant lighting is definitely a priority. The sidewalks and the signage is also met with city standards. And continuing here, we discussed a bit the fences and walls. All of that is compliant as well. Docks and seawalls are not applicable. And lastly, the concurrency determination, we don't anticipate any concurrency issues with the project. Moving on to our parking and landscaping. So this is our parking breakdown that lays out exactly how many parking spaces are required for this project and how many have been provided. You can see that there's a variety of uses that are requiring a certain amount of parking spaces, and that parking requirement is being met in a variety of ways as well. This is the landscaping plan. As I mentioned, the irrigation source is designed to be reclaimed if possible. And we'll also have a rain sensor to shut off so that way it's not running the sprinklers when it's raining or when it doesn't need to be. And this is just a little bit of an overview of the lighting. As we mentioned, sea turtle compliant lighting is a priority as well. And this just shows the stormwater vault location that's proposed. And that brings us to the finish here. And just a reminder, these are the options before the commission is A, find that all requirements of the review criteria provided in this division have been met and issue a final development order. B, find that all requirements of the review criteria provided in this division can be met with conditions specified in writing and issue a preliminary development order which requires final technical review committee review as provided in this section. Or C, deny the application based on a determination that the proposed development, even with reasonable modifications and conditions, does not meet review criteria set forth in this division. And city staff, the technical review committee recommends approval of the site plan with the condition that the ADA accessible route is brought into compliance with federal standards and in all compliance with our codes. So we would recommend approval pursuant to item B.
And you're asking for this staff report to be received into evidence as well as the slides that have been presented tonight?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have two affected parties. I forgot how to say, Zamwa?
Zuala?
Zawala, Mr. Zawala?
He gets to go first because he filed his notice of intent first.
There you go.
That's up to you.
Whoever wants to go first, we're fine. There's only two of you. I'll let you flip a coin. I'm good with it either way. We're on the beach. We do it, yeah, whatever works.
Hi, my name's Paul Byam. I live at 13500 First Avenue, or First Street East. And we live kind of adjacent to the property that's proposed going in. We've lived there for 7 years. It's a new development that has been put in. It's an eco-village. It's solar. It's eco-friendly. Very nice community. It's not an HOA, so we don't have the big hoopla about some things, but we do have some hooplas. One thing that is concerning to me is a lot of traffic patterns that we're seeing with that 6 West. You know, sure, it is great, nice venue, perfect. You guys put in a crosswalk now that people won't get hit by the car going over for the beach party or the wedding or pictures or whatever they're going to do. What we're having problems with is the parking, the cars coming and going out of the alley. If there's cars parked on 135th adjacent to my home on the south side, there's a trolley bus that comes around the corner from the west side or the east side, and he tries to cut into the alley, and he can't quite make the turn because there's cars parked there. Well, so they run down the alley in between our homes, which is kind of a private access or supposed to be a private drive. And some of the neighbors aren't liking it, which I don't mind as long as they don't sit there and idle and pick the party up. But it's creating a lot of traffic and problems with the neighborhood, with people not liking what's going on. So I guess I'm kind of a spokesman for my corner and side of things, and I'm seeing the same thing. I guess the few concerning things is that, you know, they're talking a little bit of a restaurant in the bottom. Where are the cars gonna come and go and park on for that restaurant to get food? Sure, they're saying it's gonna be a lot of walk up, it's got a lot of dine in, dine out because of the hotels and all the, you know, VRBOs around us, which, you know, it's supposed to be a small little residential neighborhood. But anyways, I'm just trying to figure out some of the parking, some of the traffic concerns. When the 6 West has a party, people park on our side of the road, signed state, permitted parking only. So that was a new deal. So now there's permit signed parkings all around the neighborhood to figure out where we can park, how we can park, when our friends can come over, how do we get a permit to park? We don't have any idea on some of that stuff, but we are getting educated on it. We can print out as many permits as we want to park, is the way I understand it. We'll just park them around the neighborhood. So that's what 6 West has been doing, and we're not liking it. You know, if there's an emergency truck, ladder truck 25 comes through our neighborhood 3-4 times a week over there. If there's cars that happen to be at the stop sign and there's cars parked there, they're not gonna make it through. If there's a fire burning down there, they're not gonna make it through. There's no parking in the back between our houses sometimes for the VRBOs because of the accommodations of the people that are there. The people are parking on the corner. There was tickets issued over the weekend there. So it's just become a great big fiasco. I don't know what we do about it. I don't know how we can handle it. I'm not here to argue about it. I'm just trying to be concerned about what we can do about making things better.
Sure.
And now that we have a new building coming in, it just is gonna magnify that. Not only the fact of it being built, you know, as we're seeing, it's visible from the beach. Okay, well, that's quite a height deal. Come out of the back, and they got a whole view of our backyards. Isn't that beautiful? Not my backyard, but the neighbors. So there's just, you know, for the amount of units and the amount of people and the amount of parking, if that was full capacity, 6 West rocking and rolling, we got parties going on, I think it's gonna be a great time party. But, you know, as long as everything is abided by the code and enforcement, you know, we can't even get people to drive by and ticket people that that don't have permits. For an example, I went off to the beach. Code enforcement was there. I said, who's monitoring this over here? Young gentleman says, I'm not sure. I said, well, they're parking over there right now without permits in their window. He says, oh, okay. I did see in my house camera as he drove by, didn't stop. So I did talk to Pam, the next lady, the next parking person that I encountered. Pam was very helpful, very helpful. She's gonna take and make sure that people are using their permits and parking the way they should. Matter of fact, Pam went by the other night with nobody even parked there. I thought that was kind of nice. So, but it's just parking in general, and then when the construction starts, where are these people gonna park? Where are the restaurant people gonna park? If that thing was full capacity with 3 people with 1 car at each unit and 26 people at the tables with 7 cars amongst the 28 people, you know there's more people than cars, or more cars than people, or more people than cars. It's just, it's gonna be a lot. And if we're not monitoring, taking care of it, making sure that dogs aren't pooping on yards like what the vet did, you know, but it's become a little bit of a problem over there, and if we can monitor it, it'll be all right. If we're not gonna monitor it, it's gonna be an issue. That's all I have to say. I welcome the building. We got to talk with the owners the other night. Great presentation. Everything is on the grow. Growing pains are painful. It's just, nobody's monitoring anything over here. I just don't understand it, so. Thank you for your time, and thank you for letting me vent here.
You got it. Thank you, sir.
All right, thanks,
Appreciate
Mike.
your time. All right, whoever lost the coin toss, you're up next. All right.
Hi, my name is Dan Cizuela. I live right across the street from the unit, and south of, west of Paul, and I've been there since 8 years already. And just from the wedding venue already, there's high foot traffic, like weddings sometimes during wedding season, there's a wedding at least every other day with the amount of valet cars that are going in there. They have that lot that's adjacent from West End Events, but they park along the street. Also, the little dog park that's by the Intercoastal.
Right.
And then the animal place, they would always they bring the dogs on mine or Paul's lawn constantly. So they'll have a pet station, but they'll definitely come across the street. It'll just be such a confined space for that many units and that many people. Just concerning.
Okay.
What else was in there? Just with that many, with the Uber drivers also constantly being on that corner as is, it just seems that small. If it was like the part of the event space getting torn down and something more narrower, but with that many units, it's just gonna be condensed, that little corner. And that is all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. All right. Anyone else? Public comment time? Thank you.
Do I have 3 or 5 minutes? I don't know how much time I have.
Just go ahead.
Thank you. My name Tom Edwards, District 1.
We'll give you a little latitude. There's not a ton of people.
Thanks, sir. I live 3 blocks from this, south of that. And the thing I'm concerned about is parking and rooftop activity. So if you've got a restaurant or some type of retail on the ground floor, you need parking for people who are coming to that. You're going to have 8 units of residents. You're going to have rooftop bar with activity, and they're saying bar is only for the residents there that are staying there that particular night. but they can have friends and family come in too. So now you've increased the capacity for that, and then you have additional parking that's needed for that. Plus, you're going to have parking for the employees too that would be working the rooftop bar. Rooftop bar usually equates to noise. So even though I didn't see the presentation from the other night with noise, they're hoping to get some of the wedding event stuff to come up on the rooftop. Does that mean live music, amplified music? You got residents behind it, to the north of it, across the street from it. You got residents all around there. I'm not sure that's compatible with the neighborhood. The other thing that happens that people keep forgetting is you have an owner that says, we're going to keep the noise down. We're not going to do this. Where's the written agreement that says that? And then, if at some point he sells the building in the future, is there a written agreement that's been, filed with the clerk's office to prevent that type of activity? And I'll give an example. You have Madeira Cantina across at 132nd. When the alcohol permit was going to be granted for that restaurant, I'm not having any live music here. We're not having any outside music. 2 owners later, we've got music out there. So that's your problem. People don't think about this, is that if the person sells the building or his units, you can very well have that type of noise. And unless you consider that and put certain conditions on it, you're going to have a problem in the neighborhood, again, with noise. That's all I have right now.
Very good. Thank you. Anyone else? Public comment? Anyone? No? Okay.
So I don't know if Mr. Botziak has any following
You want to, yeah.
follow-up?
Jack Boziak. I just want to reiterate that we have no parking on 131st. That was there has been some there over the years, but there is none in any of our plans. That's not counted in our parking count. We do have parking, meet the parking requirements for the space included in our numbers, just so you know that. I know that was raised as an issue. And we keep hearing about the West. We're not the West. We're separate of them, and I'm sorry that the West causes all these issues, but, aside, the only relationship we have with the West is in relation to parking for construction. We've arranged with them that we would make a deal with them to go in and rent parking spaces for the construction crews in that 30-space lot that they have down the end of the street. So if we did need off-site parking, it is available. The construction, like I said, parking is there. I think the big thing is that it was called the bar a couple times. It's not intended to be a bar. It's never going to be licensed for a bar. Doesn't have the parking to be run as a bar. And the owner, I didn't mention earlier, the owner really takes a lot of pride in this thing. His family settled Pinellas County in 1860, and he's been on this beach since then. So he does, I think he kind of surprised the people when he came in, because he was very supportive of what they were their objectives that they were trying to see achieved. And he has a very personal attachment to this project and this beach, because his family, as I say, has been here. His name is Chris Robinson, and they've been here since the 1860s, I believe, or 1850s. In essence, we do have the parking that we need. The construction parking, I think we can assist with, even though that's not necessarily a requirement. The West really is not related to us, and I believe that the owner has a sincere intent and will. I've come to know this guy fairly well. He has no intention of running this thing and having it open to the public. So, as we said, it would need additional parking if he were to try and open it to the public. So I think that is a reasonable approach, and I would respectfully request that you consider approval. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Actually, I can answer any questions you may have if you.
I do, in deference to the bar situation, it's not going to be set up for food service, bar service. There's not going to be.
No, it's not. In fact, no, it's not. He has no intentions of having a bar set up there or somebody running it on the rooftop.
Right.
It's just if you want to go up there and sun, you can do that. If it's a wedding maybe party that's next door, for the wedding or something, and they wanted to rent the rooms, they could meet up there, but not, I mean, the guy really takes a lot of pride in what he does, and I wish he could have made it tonight, because I think you'd see that he's a pretty, very, I can't think of the right term, but he's a very definitive guy of what he wants to do. And his dream was to find a property like this when he was successful someday, which he is now, and develop it and have a place down here on this beach that he grew up on. And I think he's a pretty sincere guy. So I think that the promises that, or what he had to say to the public that showed up for the neighborhood meeting, I'm not afraid to repeat, because he has a pretty good track record of following through on what he does. Thank you.
Anyone else have
Mr.
questions?
Bozick, I have one quick question.
All right, we got a couple questions. Go ahead, Hoosh.
All right.
A lot of questions.
Will the restaurant be open to public?
Yeah, he actually is, it will be, and there was an allowance for the parking spaces is in our parking count. What he is trying to bring in is, we did the building in the, oh boy, what's the name of that little coffee shop that everybody loves out there?
Sweet Burnett.
Sweet Burnett. Oh, no. He envisions it more as a Sweet Burnett type thing, where it's mostly takeout. He's working with some upscale type people to get them to encourage some kind of a takeout and Sweet Burnett type setup. That's his envisionment of what he wants to see go there. So he's not looking to bring in something that's, has a heavier requirement than that.
So the land is, what, .23 acres?
It's .23 acres, yeah, just about a quarter acre.
And the site allows 40 units an acre for overnight accommodation?
Oh, is it 40 or, yeah, I believe it is 40, as a matter of fact. I didn't remember.
It's 60 if it's.
We're one
60
unit
if it's
under.
transient occupancy, and
Hotel transient, yeah.
yeah.
And we are allowed 9 units under the code. We have 8.
Well, if it's 40 units an acre for transient, right? I mean, I just want to make that clear. Is it
60.
Is it 60 or is it
60
40?
for C3.
Can look it up. I think 60
Or am I
is if
thinking of
you
R3?
do
Sorry.
alternative temporary lodging units per acre. The alternative standards, I believe it's 40.
Yeah, it is 40, because .23 times the
Gives you
40
9.
would be 10 units, and, or almost 10 units, not quite 10 units.
Yes, I'm kind of calculating backwards,
Yeah,
basically.
well, we left off one of the units, so we would be able to work the square footage out, and we went through all those approval process with staff.
So this is overnight accommodation, right?
Well, it's transient hotel.
Transient,
Which is,
So I
Yeah.
just want to make that clear. Is it 40 or is it 60?
It's
40.
40.
I believe it's 40, because it was.
It's 40.
It
That's
was,
correct.
So if you divide up the land, let's say 1 acre divided by 40, you basically get, let me just did some calculations here. So when you divide
Well, if you take
Three-
40
three
times
step.
.23.
.23,
yeah.
right. So when we divide 43,560, which is 1 acre,
Yep,
divided by 40,
right?
you get 1,089. In other words, 1,089 area of land per unit.
Right.
So when you multiply 1,089 per unit times 8,
Yep,
you end up with 8,712.
8,712.
Yes,
The
8,712.
site is, and the site is approximately
10,000.
10,000 is something, yeah, 11,000,
Yes.
yeah.
So when you subtract 10,018 from 8,712,
Yep.
we get 1,306 square feet.
I
What,
don't have a calculator here, but we've
Yep.
been through this with staff and arrived at,
All right, maybe I should ask this of
Yeah.
our staff, but from density, intensity, I see an issue, and I just want to bring it up.
we meet the density and intensity, and the staff reviewed that and approved it, and we do meet it, absolutely.
Yeah, you definitely meet the density, but intensity, which would have to do with the restaurant.
We have the intensity, we meet the intensity also, as far as the use of the square footage of it relative to the, I mean, the staff did review everything, and, we didn't need any kind of, that's how we limited or came up with the square footage of the restaurant. I mean, it could be retail, it could be,
Yeah, I think I'm going to ask questions of.
Yeah, but it does, according to staff and our figures, which are on the FA, on the site data table, we do meet after dropping it back from 9 units to 8 units. We had the room for the parking, and we had we did meet the intensity and the square footage allowable.
Thank you.
Oops, one other one, I thought there were.
I've got a few.
Yep.
In terms of how do we make sure that there's no entertainment on the roof? And I'm not sure whether this is for you, and in terms of that if we can put this into the agreement, as someone said, that if it gets sold next week to somebody else, that they cannot do entertainment on the roof.
Well, entertainment, I mean, if somebody were to have a gathering up there and have some music or something, that's not entertainment. The entertainment I think we're looking to define is, there's no licensed entertainment, like they bring in, an act and open it to the public or something like that. That's the intent.
Well, but as you said, that you're going to hopefully sell it or rent it to people that are at the wedding, and they're going to be partying over at the wedding, and then they're going to come back to the units, and of course, they got this beautiful place upstairs, so they'll continue the party upstairs.
Well, I think that the definition, there's no intent for this to be a commercially open to the public thing. Now, anytime you have that's no different than saying, how do we know that somebody's not, if we had a pool, what would you say? You can't have a party around the pool, or if you do, or you break the noise ordinances, you're gonna get called out on it. So it would be, in other words, I see the same problem, for example, if we had a pool area. You couldn't come out, there'd be people out there, partying and drinking, and they could have music out there. I mean, I would assume that if there was a noise issue, it would come up before you eventually. But I can tell you, I wish that Chris could have been here tonight. And Chris does not intend to run any kind of public.
Okay, but best intentions go aside, in terms of, and that's where one of my other things is he going to stay the owner? And so long as he's the owner, yes, he could be accountable, but as soon as he sells it to somebody else, it goes out the basket.
Well, his intention is to maintain the management unequivocally. He's not allowing the management to go away with the condo hotel units, transient units can be sold to people. He does intend to sell a few of them. He intends to remain in control of the project. And, all I can tell you is that, you can make hypotheticals about things, I agree, and there's always a worst out, but I think that it is not set up to be a bar, a commercial bar. No bartenders, it cannot be operated as a commercial bar.
Okay.
And it's for the use of the people that are there. It came up at the neighborhood meeting the other night. They said, well, is it for the use of other people other than people that are, staying there overnight? And that's what the use is there for, just people that are staying in those units. And that's one of the restrictions that he's putting in there. He's putting in the docks.
Okay, so then it's going to be a condo hotel.
Well, that's what it is, of course. Yeah,
Okay.
transient, that's what transient,
Okay.
accommodations are.
A couple other little things. So the dog walking area, hopefully you would have at least bags and a receptacle, as you've got a specified dog walking area, so,
Of course,
well, I mean, you say of course, but once again, we've been through many of courses. And if it's put into the agreement, then there's no issues.
he speculated that, I think, the other night at the meeting, if I'm not mistaken. So-
Well, yeah, I mean, in
I mean,
terms
so
of, it's
fine that you
not
can
that
put
big
the-
of a deal. I think it's a great idea having a designated
we thought it
dog
was a
walking
great idea to
area.
put it there.
So, but to take it to one step further, have bags in a receptacle.
That's fine, we can stipulate that would be done.
And then finally, the stormwater vault. That's going to go underneath the driveway?
Yeah, that's
gonna
pretty
work
common
fine.
nowadays, yeah. That's why you don't see as many ponds as you used to see. People are using Storm Tech as the other commissioner knows that they use underground means now instead of just all entirely ponds.
Well, I mean, I know the one at Caddy's wasn't on there originally, so it was an afterthought.
The
And
ones
it
at
got put in the
Caddy's.
front.
Pardon me?
And it got put in the front as a wide open area, then they had to fence it in. So it was never originally intended on the original plans.
Gee, I wish we could not be accused of doing
Oh,
what
no, no,
Caddy's
I'm
is
just
doing.
saying,
I mean,
you know, I'm
I
just-
think that our intentions are clearly called out on the plans. It's an
Okay.
underwater system, storm, and it will meet code, and it's been reviewed by the staff. So we're not trying to hide anything. We're not like trying to say
Okay.
it's okay.
I'm just questioning things.
No, I understand, but we're asking for approval on what we show.
Well, and like
the
I say,
plans.
I'm trying to get everything through in my mind that I had questions about and,
I understand.
little things.
And if you
So-
have if you want to make a stipulation about the dog walking area being equipped, properly equipped, that's fine. I mean, I don't think they have any intention.
And truthfully, and that's just like, I don't think any of the questions or things that I was questioning about would be that big of a deal. So additional few little stipulations.
I agree. I don't have any problem with that. I mean, it's, only thing I'm saying is to say, that nobody will ever have any music up. I mean, they'll comply to all the regulations.
Absolutely.
they're-
And
it's
that's
not gonna
where,
be open to the public.
if it gets out of control, to call the police.
I agree. Even as an architect, we're very often asked to design, decks and things into all these places, and sometimes they do break the rules as far as sound. And we can only try to enforce things as you can to the limitations of people doing a reasonable job of meeting the code. And I think that's a reasonable request. And
I mean, I personally think it looks like a beautiful thing, but yet when you have the residents that are, have some issues, I feel that's our job to bring up their issues and get it through. And one of which, like you guys, are not personally resolved, but parking. Parking in the city is always an issue.
yeah, well, I understand. And when they make a regulation, that's something we usually don't try to vary from, is the parking regulations. I think we,
Okay, thank you.
all right, thank you.
I have a couple questions for you.
Yep.
This rooftop
It's a sun
Area.
deck. It's essentially a sun deck, yeah, with a,
you're going to need a use permit, correct? And it's got to have certain occupancy.
I don't think it needs a use permit unless it's open to the public.
Well, you have multiple people using it, so it's got to have something.
Well,
There's got to be some kind of restriction, some kind of code to permit you to use that for whatever reason or however you're going to use
Yeah.
it, correct?
Yeah, I would,
All right,
I'm,
so the next question is, how many people are you going to put on the application that can use the rooftop?
guests only it's a condo hotel, so the owners and guests that are renting the units are the only ones.
But you already said that you could go next door if they wanted to come and party on top of the roof, that
I said what?
venue next door, the wedding venue,
Yeah.
could use the rooftop, correct? Didn't
No,
you
I
say
did
that?
not. I did not say that. I said that they anticipated renting rooms potentially to some of the people next
Okay.
door. That doesn't allow the
So-
party, no, please let me finish. That does not, under any circumstances, allow the West to use the rooftop. Just like any other guest is staying in a hotel, they can use the rooftop, but if there's a limitation. But it definitely is limited to the use of the guests of that particular thing only.
how are you going to prevent people from renting rooms and inviting guests that aren't staying there, or other people that aren't staying there, to come over and party with you?
You know, there's also, there's always a chance that something, I mean, you know, the best I can tell you is that I think that the condo docs and the regulations that are in there and the regulations that we've agreed to with the city, the stipulations we've agreed to, I mean, somebody can always break any regulation. And I think that in good faith, we have tried to present this the way it is intended to be used, and the owner of the thing is retaining units in there to keep control of it. And he made assurances to the people in the neighborhood meeting that he intended to keep control of it under the plans that we've outlined to you. I mean, I think that you can do no more than, we can't restrict things to the degree of saying to somebody, you're renting in any hotel in this town, you can't say, well, you can't have anybody come to your room in a hotel. You know, but the intent's not to do this thing. This is a resort that stands on its own. It's not tied to the West. That's why when people talk about the noise from the West, we can't control the West, and we have no intention of tying it to the West, and they have no intention, and the condo docs will repeat, you know.
But anybody that rents a room
Can use
is
it.
the rooftop, correct?
Can use it, of course.
There's your problem.
I don't see that as being a problem.
Okay.
Anybody that rents a room, if we had a pool, could use the pool.
That's how I see it.
It's a facility, it's a sun deck primarily, it's set up in all the photos as a sun deck. And it's got, you know, there's no wet bar up there, there's no, you know, it's intended for use only of the people. Now, somebody can break any rule, they can speed, they can, you know, I really think that the intent is well presented, that we do not intend to have any, the owner intends not to have anybody use that other than the people that are guests there, that are staying there.
All right, in your application, you have 16 parking spaces. Did you consider the employees in that 16 for the restaurant?
We considered exactly what's required for that space, yes.
Yeah, the
My next
city's-
question is, have you thought about 3/2?
What do you mean 3/2?
3 floors with 2 floors of parking.
That's prohibitive. And 8
What do
units
you-
could
what do you
never,
mean?
well, 8 units could never, no, I don't mean prohibited, that's prohibitive. The costs are so high nowadays on construction. We do not have enough room a ramp would take that entire site to get up. A ramp would need 60, 70 feet to run to get up that high. So if you put a ramp up that high, you'd lose your drive aisles. It's impossible to do something like that on that small of a site.
I know you followed the code and so on and so forth, but I see a problem here down the road. 16 is not enough. You didn't plan on the employees. God forbid, I would like to drive there with my wife and park someplace there. I just don't see, and then you have an event center next door that are going to completely mob the neighborhood with cars in certain days of the week. I don't see how this is going to work.
Well, I have to, the parking meets the code as required. Now, if the city needs to change the code because you feel they need to look at it differently, I think that should be brought up and changed. But we're adhering to the code that is in place as to the parking, okay?
I
And to
understand
say
all that.
Well, can I please say, if you're saying the event center may have a bunch of people there that'll they'll affect the entire neighborhood. We're not part of the event center. Yeah, please do not include us in the event center for additional traffic. I mean, we comply with every element that we've gone over with the staff, and we have the parking we're required. If you believe it's not enough, you need to take the steps to change the code.
I would feel better if you took the rooftop off of this completely. Then I don't have to worry about the additional people coming, visiting Johnny at his room that he's renting for the weekend.
I
And
think
you
it's
won't have a problem with the parking. Because I know what happens here. I live here, you know, I see what happens.
Yeah.
The barefoot contester down the street here had 150 people in like 4 rooms for spring break. And don't tell me, sir, that isn't going to happen here.
I really feel like trying to pick every bad event that you can find and apply it to this site is not a fair analysis. I believe we're allowed to have a rooftop. We will put in the condo docks if necessary, the points that you've brought up. I think that's a more than fair. We should be allowed to work under the code as anyone else, and we should be allowed, if we comply to the parking, to put that number of parking spaces. I understand some of your issues, but everybody, including you, just bring up the West. We are not the West. If you're going to apply the West to every property that's in that entire location, it's going to be very difficult to take a real analytical look at a site. You know, we're allowed to disagree, by the way, you know.
That whole place, that community down there is packed,
Is what?
is packed.
I know.
You know, like you take these residents that are here on Easter or whatever, Christmas, they have guests. Their driveways, they can only park in the street, okay?
You know,
So that's what I'm saying. You don't live here, you don't see
oh,
what
I do
see.
live here. I've been here 56 years. I own properties on these beaches. I've been here 56 years practicing, okay? I'm 80 years old almost. And I have been here and heard the people back then complain about the people that have moved in since. So have you moved in since? They didn't want you here. It was
So I
like,
rest my
you know,
case.
yeah, I rest my case too.
It's the never-ending
I'm
battle,
sorry that
right?
we disagree on this, but, you know, we'd be glad to put in the condo docs whatever restrictions were felt
Fair enough.
by the board were necessary to, for sure.
Any more questions from our board?
You know?
We're good?
Thank you.
All right. On for our discussion. Thank you. Any of our fellow planning commission members like to say anything,
I'd like to ask a question or two from our staff.
please?
So Jenny, as far as calculating density intensity, how did you calculate that?
So we have it right here at the bottom of the screen. The density is 40 units per acre, so that comes out to 9.29. And they have 8 units of the temporary lodging.
Okay, so that's the temporary lodging. What about the restaurant?
Yes, and then the restaurant is an ancillary use to that as well. So we're looking at the density, and then the density does not have the floor area ratio tied to it.
How do you define ancillary use?
I believe it's
Defined in the code.
in the code.
I just want to have it publicly stated.
Actually, it's a permitted use, right? So permitted uses are retail, commercial, personal service, office and business, multifamily residential, vacation rental, temporary lodging, restaurants, and, believe it or not, adult entertainment.
Here you go.
Could be worse, I suppose.
Yeah.
I got an idea for the rooftop.
Subordinate and serves a principal building or use, subordinate in area, extent, and purpose to the principal building or use served, contributes to the comfort, convenience, or necessities of the users or occupants of the principal building or use, and is located on the same lot as the principal building or use. Unless otherwise specified, no ancillary use shall exceed 25% of the gross floor area of the principal building or use.
So ancillary use basically means a use that is enjoyed by the owners of the units. In other words, public is not allowed to enjoy that use.
It doesn't say that. It's subordinate and serves the principal building, subordinate in area and purpose to that principal building. So it's not excluding public to that use.
It's a supporting use to the main elements,
Yeah,
but not restricted to only
I
that.
totally understand that, but I'm just having a bit of a heartburn, so maybe we'd like to ask the city attorney to give us an interpretation. Typically, ancillary use does not allow, for instance, you can't have a signage, and you're not allowed to have public use. Nobody from public can come and use this ancillary use.
So I have not researched the issue in the code, but obviously the code has just been read out loud as to what is allowed and what's not allowed. I would not necessarily apply any more stringent requirements other than what the code currently provides. If the code doesn't prohibit it, then it's permitted. So I don't have really anything else to add to that. We're gonna review this project as how the code currently reads, not how we want it to read. And that's how the courts would apply the law, what is in effect as of today.
I understand that. Now, when it says use for principal use, what does the code say when it says for the principal use of the building only?
I would have the planners go ahead and read that portion of the code. I don't have that.
We're going to go ahead and pull it up on screen so everybody can see it.
Thank you.
Knowing that, while you're doing that, knowing that this is a different project, but the same flavor as the Skyline, which has Sweet Burnett downstairs, right, which the people that occupy the vacation rentals there can use the downstairs, can use the restaurants. There's actually two in that one. But members of the public can go there as well. So it's similar flavor to that, but this will be smaller apparently as well.
So as you can see on the screen that defines ancillary use, there's several stipulations about what is considered a ancillary use. And staff's interpretation is that the retail portion of this project adheres to each of the pieces of this definition, subordinate to the lodging. It's not a restaurant with lodging above. It's lodging primarily with retail below. Subordinate area is much smaller than gross square footage than it is to the lodging use. Extent, purpose, or use, I would apply that to the first statement as well. Contributes to the comfort, convenience, necessities of the users and occupants. I think that's straightforward as well. Located on the same lot, yes. And does not exceed 25% of the gross floor area of the principal building or use. So I wouldn't read this and see anything that would preclude the retail use from being considered an ancillary use in this context.
So you're saying it is considered ancillary use?
Correct.
And they can have a sign on the building for public to come and use?
I'm not aware of any code in the sign section that would preclude ancillary use from having signage.
This is the only section in the code that really talks about the ancillary use. So this is the only thing that staff really had to go off of is this definition of ancillary use.
Okay.
Can't-
One other question.
Jack.
As far as parking, so if you have 15 feet of a drive aisle, what angle parking would you need? What would be the angle parking to meet your 15-foot, let's say, drive?
Well, we would adhere to our code for that, so but how wide is the drive aisle?
It's 24 foot.
The drive aisle here is represented at 24. But I can pull up our parking table.
Yeah, it is 24.
No, I measured the distance from these spaces up here because the alley is more narrow than this central drive aisle. And I do believe it is adequate to be able to turn out at the 90-degree angle. It is close, but
If it's 90 degree, it needs to be 24 feet, and we only have a 15-foot drive alley, so.
Are we talking about the one-way?
So
It's a one-way, yeah.
So-
And so it's an angle.
I understand, but
They
we
should've
need
did
to
that.
have a certain angle parking, whether it's 30 or 45 feet for a 15-foot backup.
I got you now for the alley. He's pulling it up. I do believe that we had that discussion that it should adhere to that, but we can double check that.
cross aisle one way. So those 3 parking spaces that I had up on the screen earlier, those are all compact spaces. And so the cross aisle, which would be that rear alley, the one-way, would need to be 18 feet. And I'd be happy to show that on the diagram with the measurements to show that it meets the 18 feet that's required for the back out.
We could also, too, have him turn on the auto turn in CAD and show the maneuver that it would work if that would.
Yeah,
You'd like
but
to see
it
that.
still needs to meet the minimum dimensional
to be the 18
requirements. And
feet.
specifically, that parking close to the entrance is, that line is right on the property line, which gives you, even if you go all the way to the western line of that. I cannot read anymore, but that parking, the eastern parking that's abutting, yes, that parking to the left, right there. So if you put an 18-foot offset from that northern right-of-way line of the alley,
Right.
basically,
It does
that would
meet it.
eliminate that parking space.
No, it would not.
It will not meet code.
No, I disagree.
Yeah, I would be happy to review that. I know I was aware of this, these provisions here, and I did measure them from the alleyway. We actually worked with the applicant to shift these 3 compact spaces over in order to improve the visibility around this wall of the dumpster here, to add a little bit more space. And so I can certainly go back and measure out and do the calculations to nail down exactly what the dimensions are from the back of this parking space to the alley. I know that it's close. The calculations that I did at the time showed that they were compliant, but I'm more than happy to revisit that.
Okay. And of course, as far as the ADA and putting that 5 foot in the back of all those parking spaces, so I think you're gonna change that, right, Mr. Bozak?
Yeah,
The ADA accessibility,
Well,
you're gonna,
Actually, Hoosh, if you look, we could have moved that back over
Yes.
closer to the dumpster. I know that it measures 18 feet, because visualize, it's on an angle to that. And so even the wide end of the parking space, it is 18 feet. And I wanted to address also the ancillary. Ancillary to this resort hotel is no different than other hotels, like, look at the Cambria. The Cambria has rooftop, the Cambria has parking, and I know the Cambria has its problems. So that's why the owner was very specific about, and will put in the condo docs, as far as I'm concerned, that it's not for outside use, or we would need at least 20 more parking spaces.
so this
So
property
it's-
will
it
be
is
platted?
Pardon?
This property, in other words, he is going to sell each unit?
Not every unit, no, he's retaining quite a few of them himself, yeah, because as I said, his family's been here for a long time. He has a really special pride in the reason he picked this property and wants to develop it. And he, he grew up going to that beach right at the end of the street. And I think that, as to the ancillary, I think that we do not have any parking, we do not have any intent of using it, of opening it to the public.
At this point, we'll stop that if that's
Yeah.
appropriate. We've moved on past that
Yeah, all
stuff.
right.
But
Thank
thank you. Kind of let it go a little bit there, but we probably need to rein it back in and bring it to our board's, our panel's discussion here. So, anything else, Hosh?
Well, I really do feel uncomfortable with the definition of ancillary use, but, I mean, if our attorney says that ancillary use means that building could be open to public, then it is what it is. But by my calculations, you can only build like 500 square feet of ancillary, a restaurant, if it's not considered ancillary use, based on my
Right.
calculations.
I think in that definition, if there was one more word in there, it would be, if the word only came after the occupants and principal building or use, only. It doesn't say only, right? So as Mr. Trask pointed out, if it's not prohibited, it's permitted, right? If it's not specifically prohibited. And I think that's probably the biggest portion of that ancillary use description. It contributes to the comfort, convenience, and necessities of the users or occupants of the principal building or use. If it had the word only, then we would say nobody out from outside can come and use that. But it doesn't prohibit that. So by virtue of the statute, it permits it. No attorney here, but that's my interpretation. That's the attorney.
I've got one more. Okay.
Go ahead, Chuck.
I don't see here anything about the sidewalks and curb and gutter in terms of replacing those where they're all drive-up right now, and they're going to be sidewalks.
Okay, we
So
need to go,
sidewalk
we need
with
to address
vertical
our
curb.
city, right? We can't have him come
Well, I
back
mean,
up
you know,
and
they're
answer
not in the
questions.
plans, and they were his plans, so,
They reviewed the plans,
okay.
right? We just can't have him keep coming back up and doing back and forth, right? Am I correct, Mr. Trask?
That's correct. We should already have all of our questions answered, and it shouldn't be this back and forth. It's very difficult in a quasi-judicial proceeding to control it, because each and every time there's a question and someone has to stand up, then everybody legally has the opportunity to cross-examine that witness. We'll never finish this hearing if we do the up-down constantly.
Okay.
So I would get all your questions answered and then close the public hearing and consider some type of motion.
Okay. All right, that's where we're at. Mr. LaRue?
I do have a question for the city staff on, because hearing the public concerns about the parking, obviously, that's a big issue, and I'm familiar with it enough. It looks like the condo-tel portion calculations are fine. I think, what did it say? It said there were 16 provided, but I think I didn't count 16. Was it 13 that was actually provided?
You get credit for the bicycles.
Bicycles.
Oh, you get credit for the bikes. Okay, I got you.
Calculations on the bottom, standard 9, bicycle rack 2,
I
or
can't.
3, and then compact spaces
Oh,
and ADA
okay.
spaces.
Sorry.
Yep. Yeah.
I guess my only question is about the restaurant portion, which is currently a black box. We don't actually know what's going to go in there. We're saying, we're basically committing to that it's 28 seats and 2 employees, and we don't really know what the actual use is. And I don't, obviously, this site is super difficult to fit more parking. My exploratory question is, and just on behalf of what we've heard, is if there's a vehicle for, within a development agreement to say, any future tenant, which goes above and beyond our assumed 2 employees and 28 seats, would need to, I think the terminology in the code is like shared parking facilities, like identify a shared parking facility, maybe with the city, because there's a parking lot down the street on the corner from there that's a public space area right now, just to alleviate concerns, because right now we're just kind of assuming, right?
Right, but
to give
any
the
use of
calculation.
that space is going to be predicated upon getting the occupational permit to use that space, which will have its foundation in whether there's enough parking for the intended use, right?
Fair enough.
It's just going to be it's going to be retail or restaurant.
From an
which-
occupancy,
from
yeah,
From a conceptual standpoint, then when it becomes set up for occupation, that'll be dictated, the number of seats and tables will be dictated by the amount of parking that's available.
Yeah.
But based on the square footage, that's what's allowed to be in there if it's going to use as a restaurant.
okay. So the
Right.
the assumption is valid going forward, essentially. Okay,
Correct.
all right, thank you.
All right, at this point, I think I'll take Mr. Trask's advice. We'll close the public hearing, and we'll either look for a little bit more discussion from our panel members, or we'll accept a motion at this time.
I want to know about the sidewalk and curbs and gutters. Was that just not put in, or did I not see it in the plans?
So that's the city right away. There would be no off-site improvements required or asked for without like a development agreement or anything like that. They would have to, like wherever their cut is, it's existing. So they would, that's what their intent is, to use the existing cut.
Yeah, based on this, there was no modification to the curb cut, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So the sidewalk and everything will stay the same?
Correct.
All right. Looking for a motion. And remember your motion options here. Which, if you need to know them, I'll let you know. It's to find that all requirements of the review criteria provided in this division have been met and issue a final development order, or find that all requirements of the review criteria provided in this division can be met with conditions specified in writing, and issue a preliminary development order, which requires final technical review as provided in this section, or deny the application based on a determination that the proposed development, even with reasonable modifications and conditions, does not meet the review criteria set forth in this division.
I make a motion to approve SP 2024-02 with the stated stipulations that we talked about.
We're going to have to clarify that.
Okay, so, yeah. Okay, so what all stipulations do we want to have in here?
So we're not ready for a motion yet, is what you're saying. And before we make a motion, as a point of discussion, I think we've had some things about whether there's going to be noise or anything like that. I think some of the things we're talking about are overarching issues that apply to everybody in the city. We have code enforcement issues. People don't like short-term rentals. People don't like noise on the beach. They don't like whatever. Those are code issues, and we're missing a lot. Parking was another big one. Parking in your driveway. Dogs doing their thing in your yard. Those are all addressed in other areas in our code. And the code enforcement, if it's lacking, that's a whole different issue, and that's outside of this venue. And I don't think any development that we look at should be held to a higher standard than anyone else in the city because of a perceived issue with another property. That's one man's opinion, and when we get into further discussion, maybe that comes up again, but you got my point. So I think that if we're talking, I know the rooftop thing is an issue, I think we need to tread lightly as a planning commission, that we don't overstep where we need to go and get into code enforcement and entrench code enforcement into a development agreement. I think we need to be careful with that.
Yeah, one other thought, there's no development agreement part of this project.
Or sorry, in an
Yeah.
approval or a pending
So
approval.
at this point, the application, based upon staff presentation and the applicant's presentation, it meets all the code requirements. There's no necessity to have a development agreement. As for the comments that Mr. Bodziak made relative to adding things to the homeowner docs or the condo docs, I'm sure he's going to take note of that before it gets to the commission. But if your recommendation, if you want to address those, the two that I heard were you wanted the parking to make sure that it meets code. Mr. Gvaki mentioned that he didn't think that it met the turn requirements. Was that at the 18-foot turn requirements? And then
Dimensional requirements.
dimensional requirements, I'm sorry. And then question relative to the dog walk and the bags receptacle. I think Mr. Bodziak had made a mention that they would include that in their condo docs. So maybe that's what the motion is. Motion to approve with the condo docs addressing this and making sure that they
And
comply with the
verification of
code.
the
Verification
dimensional
they've met the
parking
code, yeah.
And the
And then
internal
I'll
ADA accessible route as well.
And modifying the ADA to be compliant.
Accessible route,
The ADA
yes.
parking space and access.
And would that also include no entertainment on the roof?
But,
Or is that?
if you're asking a question, my opinion is that's a very nebulous subject. Is entertainment somebody bringing a Bluetooth speaker and hooking their phone up to it? Or are you talking about having, the Rolling Stones on the roof? I don't know where you draw that line. And it's for the use of the occupants and their invited guests.
I think it's a little out of our scope. I think we have to trust that the noise ordinances will take care of it.
My point, yep.
Just wanted to add some context as well, if I may. From the neighborhood meeting, the owner, Chris, he used the words strict and draconian when referring to as far as what he would like to impose as the noise ordinance, as evidence to the public that he is highly concerned with the noise level. And he did mention that he would like to have in the condo documents the agreement that would have a notice of what the noise ordinance was as far as amplified music, the hours, and that he desired those standards to be strict and draconian out of respect to the people around him. And I think the applicants would recall that that's correct from the neighborhood meeting.
Well, condo rules can, it's a membership organization. They can decide, and the developer as the originator of those rules can decide what they want to do. They can obviously make rules that are more strict than the code. They just can't be less, right? They can, no amplified music, no whatever. They can do that. But I think that's beyond us to set that standard. We have the codes to work within. That's just one man's opinion at this point. All right, so you ready for your motion? Got it figured out yet?
Well, I guess I make a motion to approve Zandelberg SP 2024-02 with the various modifications that are going to be done by the city and put into the ordinance.
Is it appropriate for me to clarify?
Following the direction that you're going on that, Mr. Dillon, so.
What did you want to have added in there? The dog bag
Well, all of the
thing?
things that were going to be required, all the things that he said, and the stipulations of the handicap, the stipulations of the right-of-way going around the right. So I'm not really too sure, and I guess I'm the only one taking a stab at this, that I'm trying to get all of the stuff,
Now we're getting there.
completed and included.
To be fair to them and to be fair to us, that should be all presented in black and white before, because everything that's being said is hearsay information.
You can make your recommendation of approval based upon conditions, and those conditions would address Mr. Connolly's concerns that you don't have something in black and white as to these issues. So the motion would be similar to, I move approval of site plan application, the Sanderling SP 2024-02, with the following conditions: that the condominium documents specifically lay out the noise code ordinance as it currently exists, that the condo docs also require for the dog walk that dog bags and receptacles may be made available, and that all parking must meet the current code requirements, including the ADA requirements. Did I hit all of them, Mr. Dillon, that you wanted to do?
I think you got it.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, I mean, that's,
Okay,
Can
so
I-
that would be your motion?
Yes,
then?
that would
Okay.
We
be
can
my
accept
motion.
that as the motion.
Okay.
So do we have a second to that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion itself? Anybody need clarification? All right. So we have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Dillon,
Yes.
Commissioner Marr,
Yes.
Commissioner Connolly,
No.
Commissioner LaRue,
Yes.
Commissioner Gavahi,
Nay.
Chairman Wyckoff.
Yes. Okay. Motion approved. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time, everyone. Thank you for everyone coming in and sharing your evening with us thus far. While you go home and get comfortable, we'll be here for a little while. But we thank you for your time. We have nothing under item 6 for old business. Item 7, Planning Commission discussion. Anything in particular our Planning Commission members have a burning desire to discuss at this point? Number 8, administrative staff presentation. The first one is the Madeira Beach Town Center Special Plan Amendments to C3, C4, and R3 zoning districts. I hope there's not a lot.
Okay, now we're going to talk about something different. So we'll be talking about the Madeira Beach Town Center Special Area Plan and amendments in the land development regulations, looking at C3, C4, and R3 zoning districts. And I know that all of you have seen this slide. It looks very familiar. Just wanted to remind you how the local land regulations work and what the players are. So we're really just looking at the county, which is Fort Pinellas, and then locally our comprehensive plan and their code of ordinances. So at the county level, they have their countywide plan that includes the rules, strategies, and map. So every single parcel in Madeira Beach will have 3 different categories. One will be the countywide plan category that's seen on the map. I'll show you a picture of the map. I think it's the next slide. In the countywide plan, this really says overall uses, allowed uses, intensities, and densities. And then we go locally. We're going to the Madeira Beach Comprehensive Plan. Looks very similar. We are looking at the future land use element and then the corresponding future land use map. And so you will have also another use on a property, and that's with the future land use. Has intensities, densities, and allowed uses. And then at the bottom here, the Madeira Beach Code of Ordinances. We're looking at the land development regulations, like your zoning, and then your corresponding zoning map. So at the top, you have the countywide plan, intensities, densities, comprehensive plan looks very similar. They both have to be compatible. And then at the bottom where we have the zoning, that's more of the nitty-gritty where you have your setbacks, your height, also includes your intensity, densities, and allowed uses. So the area that we're focusing on tonight is the Madeira Beach Town Center. So at the countywide plan map, that is an activity center. So similar to the Johns Pass Village Activity Center, it's a different category of activity center, but it's still an activity center. So it's this blue area right here. And then going to the comprehensive plan, which is our local comprehensive plan. The future land use is planned redevelopment mixed use, so that kind of this indigo color right here. So the same outline as the activity center. And then looking at the zoning map, so our land development regulations, you can see there's multiple zoning categories within that area. And I didn't pull up this parcel, but this is a PD. So a little bit of history about the Madeira Beach Town Center Activity Center. Back in 2007, the comprehensive plan, that's our local plan, was amended to include that planned redevelopment mixed-use category. 2009, the Madeira Beach Town Center Special Area Plan was adopted, and that land was designated with that future land use category. And then in 2014, there was an amendment to the Special Area Plan. So if you go back thinking about Johns Pass Village, when that land was changed to an activity center, we had to adopt a special area plan. That special area plan is a document that kind of tells you intensities, densities, how that area runs. Also has a lot of analysis within that special area plan. So the Madeira Beach Special Area Plan has 3 chapters. It's similar to the Johns Pass Village Special Area Plan. Like I said, it has to go with an activity center. So within the Special Area Plan, very similar to Johns Pass Village, there are different character districts. Now these character district standards, they have different standards. So yes, you have your intensities, your densities, your units per acre. Also has in height in the special area plan, and those things were never brought in over to the land development regulations. So they were never brought into zoning. And they should have been brought over into zoning. So here are the different character districts. You can see densities, floor area ratio, ISR, and then here's where we have the height, the stories above BFE. So all of this data lives in the special area plan. It's like connected to it through like the comprehensive plan, but it never was brought within the land development regulations.
Jenny, may I ask you a question?
Yes.
So going back to that map, I guess as far as, let's say, overnight accommodation or residential, let's say, units, so you apply both units per acre and floor area ratio together?
The floor area ratio, and Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, it's only for commercial. So for temporary lodging or residential, it does not have a floor area ratio. It is only commercial.
But if it's rezoned to a PD and they do a development agreement that does that, the county's alternative temporary lodging use standards, then it's an all-inclusive FAR.
But otherwise, it would only be for commercial.
So that 1.2, that's, it says commercial only, I can see that.
Commercial core.
Yeah, commercial core, so that is, I know it's kind
It's
of
the
hard to
purple.
read. Trying to put everything together in slides, it's like this purple
Yes,
area.
I mean, I get that, but why would commercial have 1.2 FAR?
That was in the special area plan. I can't really say exactly why, or, you know, if you wanted to change these standards, I would say you have to open up
It's
the
generally the most
activity
intense
center,
use.
the comprehensive plan, and the special area plan.
Massive. I've never seen commercial to have 1.2 FAR.
It
Never.
is quite large.
Yeah. It's just like 120% of the property. Yeah.
Got that.
Yeah.
So this is what's already in the special area plan.
And then with mixed use, it's done proportionally where you have to allocate the density to a certain amount of lot area and the intensity to a certain amount of lot area. And that's for all those character districts, unless if it's the scenario where someone does a PD and development agreement, then it's all-inclusive.
Thank you.
So basically what we're doing is looking at the special area plan, seeing where these standards were not put into the land development regulations, and just bringing that up. That's the easiest way to state it. So this is the same table, just inputting the zoning categories here on that right side. So you can see there's a variety of zoning districts that this touches. So these updates are to ensure the consistency between the comprehensive plan, the special area plan, and the land development regulations or zoning. So just including those character districts and those standards into the zoning. So if you flip to your packet, it's a little easier to see. We can bring it up as well. So we also included the whole special area plan, just quite large here.
It's going to start on page 92 of the packet.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
You're welcome.
Okay. So as you can see here, it's including that planned redevelopment mixed use, stating that it's, the R3 also has a planned redevelopment mixed use as a land use, and then activity center at the countywide plan. Also including townhouses as permitted use, and you'll see this in a few of the other zoning districts as well. And then also including, now this is in the special area plan, but the open rooftop uses, similar to what we saw earlier today, that if you were going to use your roof as an open rooftop use, you would have to get a special exception. Special exceptions have to go to the special magistrate. They're voted on at the special magistrate. It would be a notification of all property owners within 300 feet. So everybody would get a mailed letter. And then you could be an affected party. So just some way that the neighbors could have input on open rooftop uses.
And that's for any type of use, whether it's townhome?
Yes, that's how it's drafted right
Right.
now.
No,
This
just
is just a
curious.
draft and
Yeah,
discussion,
okay.
so obviously that can change. But we thought it was important to have some approval process for open rooftop uses, since we see that a lot. And it's an allowed use right now, but doesn't really have a way for public input all the time. This is just one way to allow that use with a public hearing and allowing the neighbors to give input as well.
I might suggest an edit to that. That it be if the rooftop area is accessible by more than one unit, right? I mean, if you think about a
That makes
townhome,
sense.
and if townhomes are permitted, but you have a rooftop deck for the townhome, that's technically only accessible by that individual unit because there's firewalls and everything between it. So if there was some sort of a common area like we just saw, then maybe a
Then that
special
would trigger
exception
it.
permit, a special exception use is required.
That's a good
But I
idea.
don't think it would make a lot of sense to require a special exception use to go before the magistrate if you're talking about an individual unit that is only accessible by that unit to that rooftop,
Or a single-family home.
or a single-family home that has a rooftop amenity.
Do you think it'd be worth specifying?
I agree with that, yeah.
For commercial
Okay.
use?
Yeah. But
Yeah.
I see the common element issue that we saw it just now, right? And so we're
Even
working
if
on
it was residential, if you have multiple units, somebody could congregate, have a party. So just like what we saw earlier,
Right.
there's
Well, I mean, you
nothing
can't stop
really
me
in
from
the
having a party
code.
at my house either, in my backyard around the pool, until it gets too noisy and then code enforcement
Yeah.
gets called or whatever. But, so that would apply to any of those single-unit access
But we
only
know we're more likely to see,
in a common area situation.
Exactly.
Right,
okay.
right.
Is there any way that this could be put in front of the planning committee as opposed to just the magistrate?
Not that comes off of, to the top of my head. I think this is a good place to put it because it's a use. And so that's where you commonly would see when somebody comes in, oh, we want to propose this development. Okay, we look at the uses, we look at the accessory uses, we look at the special exception uses. I can't think of any other section in the code that it would trigger, or any other areas. And we're also, through this Madeira Beach Town Center special area plan and putting it in the code, we're really just looking at those R3, C3, C4 zoning at this time.
Well, I think I saw somewhere in here, and it might be in the town center thing, where all of the districts had roof access, I believe. I mean,
And this doesn't not allow that or not permit that. It's a way to permit it, but requiring it to go to a public hearing or to the special magistrate.
okay, I can't find it right now, but if I can get to it. But I mean, but I guess it goes into the thing of where we were saying before in terms of if we can take care of this before it becomes public. And the biggest issue with all of these things is the rooftop noises. I mean, so I don't know as to whether or not if this is the place to put it in here, that, to some extent, the magistrate is a legal person, but he doesn't live here, he doesn't have to deal with the citizens, and, granted, he does it what's legal, but yet is what legal is right. And if all the people don't care for the noise and you get into the thing of, putting stuff into documents, well, okay, so does it really happen? And I'm just trying to figure out as whether or not if we can put some teeth into this at this point.
Then you're right back to a code enforcement issue.
Well, we need to help code enforcement to do less enforcing.
Well, but it's already there. I mean, it's already there in the noise ordinances.
Do we have a certain decibel that we have to go by for noise ordinance?
Yeah, after 10 PM, it's 20 decibels. And on weekends, it's 11 PM, I think. Same decibel level. And that applies to every zoning category. I mean, you can't be a nuisance to your neighbors. And especially, waterfront properties are especially bad because the sound carries across the water. Ask me how I know.
So I wanted to bring up the criteria for special exception uses in our code, just to show if someone applied for like an open rooftop use, what criteria they would have to meet. I'll go back. In addition, okay, I just want to see the variances. Okay, just one.
Getting seasick.
I think it's mostly that C, because that just goes to section 110.
Oh, here we go. This is the
Okay,
section I
that's
was
what you
looking
were looking
for.
for.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for. So here's what it has to be: a permitted special use, that the use is so designed, located, and proposed to be operated that the public health, safety, and welfare and convenience will be protected, that the use will not cause substantial injury to the value of other property in the neighborhood where it is to be located, that the use will be compatible with adjoining development and the proposed character of the district where it is to be located, that adequate landscaping and screening is provided as required in the land development regulations or otherwise required, that adequate off-street parking and loading is provided, and ingress and egress is so designed as to cause minimum interference with traffic on abutting streets, that the use conforms with all applicable regulations governing the district where located, except as may otherwise be allowable for planned unit developments. If a variance is also desired and or required, a separate application shall be submitted concurrently with a special exception application. Special exception use will not grant to the land more privilege than the best use available in a zone where that special exception use would be a principal permitted use. No application for special exception use shall be considered by the special magistrate until the applicant has paid in full any outstanding charges, fees, interest, fines, or penalties owed to the city by the applicant or the owner or possessor of the property under any section of the code. So I just wanted to show what we have already in place with special, if someone applied for a special exception use.
And then staff will go through for the variances and special exceptions. When we go to the special magistrate, we write up a staff report and we specifically go through all of those standards. Does it meet it? Why does it meet it? Does it not meet it? Why does it not meet it? So the special magistrate's really looking at that, as well as properties within 300 feet will be notified of that potential, of that application.
Okay. What else you got?
Okay, we can go forward with the other ones.
Right along.
And then we'll add the, if accessible to more than one unit. Let's see, so you can see here, and all the sections look very similar. So we had to include here, if your property's in this type land use category with the comprehensive plan, or if you're in the plan redevelopment mixed use, so you can see that language, and you'll see in all the sections where your density is slightly different. And then, so this is the R3, which there are 3 different character districts. So if you're within the plan redevelopment mixed use category of the comprehensive plans, the Madeira Beach Town Center, Activity Center, then it separates it. If you're in this character district, your density is this. If here in Beachfront District, this is your density, Peninsula District, this is your density. So you'll see this in all of the zoning, how it's broken out. So it's a little bit more wordy, but we try to capture everything.
This appears to be lowering density in some of these districts?
Yes, so it looks like from 18, it's 15.
Yeah, 15 units per acre is the max residential density throughout the town center.
And then, but then you can see some of the temporary lodging goes from 50 to 60 or 50 to 30, or in that Peninsula District, it's, instead of 50, it's 15. So there's a variety of, some places it's increasing. But this was in the comprehensive plan, this is in the special area plan, so we're not making changes to that document. It's just bringing those standards and putting it in the land development regulations, which should have been done when it was created.
And it doesn't increase above the current maximum in the R3 zoning district. We, with the alternate temporary lodging use standards, we reduced from 75 to 60 last time around with our ordinance update. So it doesn't, so any of the places where it's 60, that's what the current maximum is with a development agreement. So it doesn't change.
Then you can also see in the height, in that table where they just said X amount of stories above base flood elevation. So it's just bringing that language in here. If you're in this land use category and in these character districts, that's what it is.
Is that base flood or design flood?
It had it as base flood, even though we measure as design flood.
That's typically 3 feet above.
We're
base-
4
4 feet.
Yeah, we're pretty high.
Good for insurance.
Exactly. And then you'll see, here's the floor area ratio, so that was also in that table, just bringing those over, as well as the ISR.
And now the red is what you're looking to add to the existing, correct?
If it's underlined, then it's adding. If it's a strike through, then it's removing.
I guess the only increase might be that commercial core FAR, but previously for C3, it was the 1.2 before we had to reduce it elsewhere to the 0.55, so it would be restoring it to 1.2, but within just in the commercial core part of the activity center. So it
was 1.2 previously?
Yeah, outside, the areas where the county's retail and services or our commercial general or residential office retail, we had to reduce the commercial FAR to 0.55.
If you remember when we touched all of the zoning districts last year, I think it was like near the end of last year, that's what Andrew's talking about. When we realized, we're not consistent with the county, let's fix that. Basically what Andrew and I are doing are trying to just go back in time and fix everything. So fix everything that we see that comes.
Got your work cut out for you.
Yeah, there's a lot.
So then is this area going to kind of become similar to Johns Pass Activity Center? The restrictions and all that stuff that we're going to be going over next, but this is going to be the next step?
It's very similar. So how Johns Pass Village Activity Center, how we had that application with the county to change it to activity center land use. And then we did it in our comprehensive plan, changed that. And then we're kind of at that last stage of putting it all in the zoning. That whole process, that's what happened here, but I don't know if there was a consultant here or there just wasn't planning staff. Basically, it went to the county, changed the activity center, and then at the comprehensive plan, changed to that PRMU mixed use, which is basically like Johns Pass Village, changing it to activity center, and then it just stopped. So we're picking up, oh, okay, this should have been in the land development regulations. Let's put it in now. They should have done it years ago.
Okay,
but
so,
it's
so
bringing it
then
in.
basically all the stuff that's in here, the black is what's in place and the red is what we're looking to add to make it the special area plan and bring it up to standards?
Yes, except for the open rooftop uses and then that townhouse. Those are, I think, the only things that we really wanted to get that rooftop uses some sort of hearing and notification. So we thought that was important. We're also writing that into, you'll see the next item, into the draft for the Johns Pass Village Activity Center.
Do we have any incentives for developers to do more than code? Do we? Be-
Not really in this. You'll see design standards and guidelines in the Johns Pass Village Activity Center. I would say if in the future, doing something like that in the Madeira Beach Special Area Plan, you'd really have to go back into the special area plan for Madeira Beach Town Center, revisit that, relook at that, and then make changes to the special area plan and then bring it into the land development
Well,
regulations.
one way certainly we can do is to lower the density. However, we can make bonus density, which would still be under Pinellas County's regulations. So.
The
if-
alternative temporary lodging
We-
standards.
We already have that for the town center. The alternative temporary lodging use standards, they're adopted if you rezone to a PD. I guess the big difference between the town center special area plan and the Johns Pass one is kind of the town center one incentivized doing a PD and a development agreement, while the Johns Pass one, we've kind of de-incentivized rezoning to a PD, but there's still an incentive to do a development agreement if you want to go that path. But what we wanted to avoid was the issue with town center is the PDs were kind of like one-off deals where you just wouldn't get consistency throughout those character districts, which we didn't like.
Yeah.
So instead, with Johns Pass, we want to keep that underlying zoning intact. But if a developer wants to do the development agreement, that process would still exist, but there wouldn't be a rezoning.
So you'd still have to keep your height and your setbacks and,
So every project in town center will be PD.
if they wanted higher standards.
that's-
If you wanted to go through that alternative temporary lodging use standard where you get the bonus, temporary lodging, you have to rezone as a PD.
I mean, that's why I like Cambria is more than that, at 3 stories over 1 floor parking, or like it had to be rezoned. But that's the way it seems like it was designed, was to basically incentivize to go through that process to do a PD. But with Johns Pass, we're not doing it that way. So and then also with FAR down Johns Pass, it's an all-inclusive FAR for basically everything down there, where it has to be both the density and the FAR for all uses on the property.
Well, and then there's I mean, we all know about the beach maker, 8-story, going in the triangle, and then is there any other existing stuff? Is Level Rocks have an existing PD on it?
Yes, it does.
There's a development agreement in place there, right?
Yes, there is.
So are there any others in place that the city knows of?
We can go up to the map. I can just kind of show you. Oh, did I go too far?
We included the zoning and future land use map, so we.
Oh, it was in the presentation. Oh,
Yeah.
No, I just missed. No, it's not.
Didn't we add the schooner on
So you can kind of see,
the
here's
zoning?
like the Level Rocks, what you're talking about. That has years ago, development agreement, PD, and then this is all one project.
Yeah.
Right here. So this was all rezoned PD together and has a development agreement together. And that was in 2017 that actually both of those were rezoned. It's been a while.
Can you put your mic on? Because I can't hear you over here. Yeah, and I'm sure the public will want to hear you too.
I think you made a comment when I asked you about Lever Rock, how long the agreement was, and I think you said 20 years? Or the state law allows them to go 20 years to perform on their,
Under the statute,
there you go.
but in this particular case, for Holiday Isles, that's how I refer to it, where the old Leverex was, there is a development agreement and an approved development order. But every single time that there is a hurricane or some type of emergency declaration, the permitting has been continued. And I think we're up to 2029 and 2030 now is when they're going to expire. So it's a long time. And unfortunately, it may get longer because every single time we have a hurricane, they can
They apply
extend
for a
it.
continuance.
Yeah. It'll continue to push it. So,
Is that something we should have in our mind for future development agreements?
that, I don't know if we're going to be able to control that, though, because we could have it in our development agreement, but the state statute allows that timing.
state, okay,
Yeah,
probably
to
should have
to
asked a better
extend it. So
question,
we wouldn't be able to control that until the legislature changed that statute.
Okay, yeah, I mean, like, a no hurricane continuance clause.
There you go.
Right? I mean, we can't do that.
No.
Okay. But at least it's not 20 years, it's 5 years, right? Better than 20, I suppose. Yeah, well, you got that, there, you got that going for us. So, all right. It's a while, for sure.
Well, as we're here, I've got a question about, okay, so the maximum building height is now all new.
Yes, if you're within this area, and then depends on what,
Well, it's 110,
District.
110, 232. Page 94 of the,
so this is pulling these standards right here. You can see in the table, and this is copy paste from the special area plan where it says stories above BFE.
Yeah, so that's new because these character districts were not in the code before.
Yes.
right, so if we're looking to, and I guess you're looking for the input, I mean, I think rather than 3 stories, do an actual footage rather than 3 stories, because if they build 3 15-foot stories above parking,
There is an overall height restriction, right?
Yeah,
You can
What-
go back here. So you would like it to be,
well, I mean, and just like, have a number as opposed to stories, because they could put in 15-foot,
It is, it's
we
44 feet.
were kind of stuck with what's in the
ar-
special
it's right
area
above it.
plan. I mean, we literally just took the language words for word from it for each character district. Unfortunately, they really shouldn't put the height limits in the special area plan, because anytime you change it, it has to be a comprehensive plan amendment. So that means you have to do all these additional hearings, it has to be sent off to the state, and you gotta jump through all I don't know why they put the height in the special area plan instead of in the zoning. Because elsewhere, as you can see, it's measured in feet from design flood elevation, which is how
Right.
we have it set up everywhere, but for some reason in the special area plan, it was this. And that's what we had to take from it, unless if we do a comprehensive plan amendment and remove it or change it.
okay, so I guess I don't understand. My page, that's all red, so is that all new, or just what's underlined?
So it was 44 feet. Currently, I didn't like the wording of it, and I wanted to clarify it was from design flood elevation. So that's why I crossed out where it said 44 feet here and moved it up there. So it's in red, but it's still the same content. I just crossed out.
nothing changed. If you go to our definitions, it specifies it's measured from design flood elevation.
The previous said, which is now stricken, no building in the R3 density multifamily shall exceed 44 feet in height. What he's proposing is to change that language to read as is underlined,
Okay,
right?
now I understand.
Okay.
Yeah.
And some of it is just making sure the wording is consistent.
Right.
So you'll see that too. There is a lot of red. But we're also
Like
adding
my school papers
language
when I was a
of
kid, a lot of red.
the future land use category of the comprehensive plan. That's a lot of words. But so people know where to look for that future land use instead of, what is this? I don't know.
Alrighty. Only 197 pages to go.
I know it was a large packet. So you can see in the C3, it looks very similar, including that plan redevelopment mixed use as one of the future land use categories, and then the activity center and the comprehensive plan. Townhouses, that open rooftop uses, which will change if accessible to more than one unit. And then you can see here, yes, there's red, but it's just making sure that that language is consistent with the rest of the language, since of within its properties in the commercial general, and then including that plan redevelopment mixed use, the density, intensity, the heights. Lot coverage, ISR. That should have been red. Spelling out instead of CG, commercial general, and going to C4, very similar, including that PRMU and activity center. Townhouses, open rooftop uses if accessible to more than one unit. Bringing in that PRMU, future land use category, the density, the height, lot coverage, and the ISR. I think that is it. And then we have the whole entire special area plan, so in here. So if you wanted to read through that,
Yep.
you're welcome to. But it's pretty lengthy, so that is all that we have for this item. There's a lot of changes, but it's pretty straightforward, just bringing in the standards from the special area plan into the zoning.
Okay. Makes sense to me. Any other questions for them on this particular topic before we move on to the next one?
And
Sir?
public input?
Yeah, we didn't do public comment, you're right. Let's go ahead and do that now.
Tom Edwards, District 1. I've been a resident here for 44 years, so I've seen how the city operates on a number of things. If you allow open rooftop uses to go for a special exception in R3, C3, C4, you're opening up Pandora's box. And I'll tell you why. You can use the example that you just had with the Sanderling that you just passed, that you recommended. So you go ahead and have 4 people rent units there, and they got the big event at West Events, and they do the beach, come back and party, and then they come back, they can bring their friends and family. So if you got 75 people there, you're going to have all those people. They can invite as many as they want up on the rooftop. 75 people up on the rooftop. There's no management on site to regulate it. And that's what you run into problems with these, is you don't have anyone. They can have all they want in the condo rules, but who's gonna go ahead and say, whoa, you're going too loud with this music? Think about the neighbors. There's no one there to go ahead and regulate it. And you're going to have the same problem if you allow this to go ahead and with the open rooftop. And you got places like the Barefoot Beach Resort that had a development agreement and they could do some things, development, if they did the rooftop. The development agreement expired. Now they're going to come back and they've tried to come back in with alcohol permit request, and they withdrew it. If this opens up here, they were going to do alcohol and beverages up there. And again, they said, well, it's just for our guests. But again, you got friends and family. You got the college crowd comes in. You got a lot of noise that's going to occur. Open rooftop equals noise. And the residents are concerned about that. Let's go with Caddies. They just came back and they were trying to go ahead and expand their alcohol permit to the beach. Okay? And the residents, when that came up before in February 2021, had some real concerns with the noise that it would create. And it was passed that they could only go ahead and serve alcohol on their impervious surface and had to contain it in the building. Then you got the owner, just did a newscast just a month ago, well, we're going to put chairs on the beach. And then he's inviting people to go down to the beach. They've had live music there underneath. And it was affecting the neighbors. One of the neighbors came in and says it was so loud we couldn't even carry on a conversation. And they were living in the condo next door. You really need to consider this. I don't think it should go to a special magistrate. I think it needs to go ahead and get public comment and go to the commissioners. Let them make the decision. Let them hear the public comments. If you go to a special magistrate, he's going to say, well, you know, you got 10 people that come, and maybe 7 are totally against it. And yet the applicant brings in some people and says, oh, we're all for it. How's he going to vote? There's no criteria. So I think it should go to the city commissioners. If they want to have it come to you all to listen and make a recommendation, but let it go to the city commissioners to make a decision. I think this is totally wrong, putting it in like this where they can go to a special magistrate. Talking about noise. I was in law enforcement for 40 years. I can tell you the noise ordinance stinks. You're using the county standards. We used to have a noise ordinance that says if you're being disturbed and you're more than 100 feet away from the property, then the deputy could do some action. You go ahead right now and you call for deputy for noise meter. There's no one in the city that has a noise meter. I've talked to the deputy. Well, sergeant has a noise meter. Talk to the sergeant. I don't have a noise meter. We can get someone. One time the person was up in Largo. They have no idea, the deputies, how many people are certified to run the noise meters and how to operate them. You get bass sound. You can go ahead and I have people that are 250 feet away down on the beach, and it's the bass that carries. And you'll get in the house and you hear boom, 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 boom. You don't even hear the music. You get a wind coming off the beach from the Gulf. It's going to carry that noise blocks away. You have the schooner. They were wanting a rooftop activity, and they're talking about we can put up some baffles and stuff. I've even had the architect say, well, we're going to put some up, but yeah, we aren't going to be able to take care of every noise. Of course they're not, because the noise is going to carry. With a strong wind, cool wind, it carries across the water, you're going to have the people complaining. You got residences in the R3 that will be affected greatly with that. So please consider that. Some of the things I made a comment to, and I suggest that you don't let them put this into the special exceptions use. I think it's wrong.
Thank you. All right, we can move on. Nobody else here to give public comment. Sorry, I forgot it the first time around. Okay, so we can move on to the next topic up for discussion, the Johns Pass Village zoning draft.
I've got one that, as I was just going through here, coastal high hazard area in the Madera Beach, TC area, page 187. 257 permanent residential dwellings. Okay. I don't understand what that.
I think this might have been one of the standards or questions that they had to answer for the county.
Yeah, that's in the,
Because when we had to do our special area plan for Johns Pass Village, it was different, but we did have a section of coastal high hazard area, and then there was, I think, 8 or 10 topics that we had to address. So
I think
just
it was
something
based on,
standard.
on the proposed density and the land mass that was there. It was perceived that there could be an additional 257 units placed in a coastal high hazard area, and that was of concern. And then it was addressed in that a lot of the land is under public ownership, so there's no reality in which you could get that extra density because of the land that's owned by the public.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
and this was for Town Center, not for Johns Pass. This is a different.
Right, so would
special-
this be Rock Park area, that if they, I'm just, what?
So it could be Tom and Kitty Stewart Park.
Well, no, this is all in the Madera Beach Town Center special area plan.
So it would have to be that, yeah. Yeah, here, all this.
Okay.
We're sitting in it. Okay. Got that? Good.
And a lot of the special area plan, when we were going through this, and it was because we were going through it with Johns Pass Village, there are different standards and formats and questions that we had to answer to the county. So that looks like that was one of the standard questions. Okay, so going to Johns Pass Village Activity Center, don't have a presentation. Y'all should be familiar with this. So very similar to what we were talking about before. The land was changed into Activity Center at the countywide plan, changed to Activity Center at the comprehensive plan, future land use, and now we are looking at the zoning, land development regulations. It's very similar in what we were just talking about. So the plan going forward, to make this easier, we plan to rezone this entire area to one zoning category, and then having this Appendix D to break out all the character districts. And within each character district, you see the permitted uses, accessory uses, special exception uses. Heights are different, densities, intensities. We can just kind of scroll through. So this is the beginning. So this is page 199 of your packet. I know that you saw this last month. I don't think there was any changes from last month.
The only change that you might see is the definition, intent, and purpose, and intent.
Up here, which is just from the special area plan, right?
Yeah,
Andrew?
yeah,
Okay.
I think that was the only change.
Well, here, now as we're getting there, here's where I see open rooftop use, open rooftop use, open rooftop use. They're in every category, which,
As a special exception use, like what was being proposed in the other ordinance.
so can't we put some teeth into this? I mean, that we're trying to put it into all these areas and special
Yeah,
exception
I mean,
uses.
this is the time to do that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You want it to be written differently, this is the time to do that.
Well, in terms of having more than just the magistrate hear it. If the magistrate okays it, I think the planning committee should also okay it, which gives residents more chances or more opportunity to speak their piece.
I agree.
Currently, under your code, that's not permitted. The only entity that could address an order that was entered by your special magistrate would be circuit court. You're basically going through a quasi-judicial hearing you're having competent, substantial, and relevant evidence provided, a decision is made based upon not only what the applicant is providing, but what city staff is providing, and everyone in the audience is going to take that into consideration and make a decision. So we can't be having you second guess a quasi-judicial hearing for a recommendation to the commission. So either it needs to come away from the special magistrate making the decision and giving it to the commission, or leave it like it is. In other words, do you want to politicize it? Because if you take it to the commission, you're politicizing it, or are you leaving it with the special magistrate and he's going to rule based upon the law and the evidence before him? That doesn't mean that the commission can't do that, but there's a tendency when it gets to the city commission level, there's more pressure to do what the public wants versus what the law requires. So,
I've found in things that I've dealt with, it's a lot harder to get something past a special magistrate than it is a commission as well.
And this would still have to go through the same process that Andrew brought up before with all those requirements.
And the alcohol license would still have to go through the commission, so I mean, even if they got the special exception use approved, it still would be up to the board to decide on their alcohol license and what restrictions that would have, or if they would not approve it.
If it was, if the business, if it was a commercial business, if they were going to sell alcohol, then it would have to go through the commission for the alcohol license.
Okay, well, I'm just thinking in terms for like two things. Cambria, nobody thought Cambria was going to be as noisy as it is. And then the Barefoot Beach Club. You know, when they have music up there, you're up 8 stories and the music goes very far. And for the people in the Johns Pass district, I think this is just opening up, you know, freedom where I'm not sure as far as what the legal ramifications are, but citizen-wise, I think that's where the citizen should have a little bit of say, but if it's not legal, I don't know what to say.
no, citizens definitely have a say at the special magistrate hearing, absolutely. And so he's going to consider all of that. And when the special magistrate is considering approving or denying, he also has the ability, and he has in the past, approved with conditions. So if there is some in particular that needs to be addressed, the special magistrate has that legal authority to do that. So he will receive that input. So the public definitely has, you know, a say in what's going on. They'll be noticed of the hearing, they'll have the opportunity to be there, speak, yeah.
Okay, and then, of course, I guess to reiterate this, everybody in the city could be a person of interest. I'm trying to think what the exact term is.
Affected party.
Affected party.
So, yes and no. There is this, what we call the Renard decision. And the Renard decision basically gives us the guidelines as to what is considered to be an affected party. And I'll quickly grab that for you and I'll explain. So to be an affected party, the Florida law requires the following factors to be considered: the proximity of the party's property to the property to be zoned or rezoned, or in this case, special exception use or not; the character of the neighborhood, including the existence of common restrictive covenants and setback requirements; the type of change proposed; and the fourth thing is whether the party is among those entitled to receive notice under the zoning ordinance. So you're supposed to take all those things into consideration to determine whether or not they're adversely affected party. So literally, most of the time, an adversely affected party is going to be within 300 feet of whatever the property is that is subject to what is going on. It could be farther, but if it's farther than the normal notice requirement, it would have to meet these other requirements. So adversely affected party is the terminology you were looking for.
Well, okay, so I live in the middle of District 2. I mean, you know, so, but yet I'm not within 500 feet of any things that would be going on, but yet I hear John's Pass music down my canal all the time. I mean, so I am definitely affected by it, but yet I'm not within the legal footage.
So you still have, even though you're not, would not be considered an affected party under the code and under this statute and under this Renard versus Dade County case that I just referenced, you still have the legal right as a resident to come and speak. You just don't have the legal right to present witnesses and cross-examine. That's the only, the real distinction.
Okay, so it would be the three-minute, or whatever, public comment.
Or whatever the chairman or the mayor gave the person to have the ability to speak.
Well, it would be
And
the
this particular
magistrate.
special magistrate, he doesn't watch the
No,
clock.
I know, he's very good, and that's where, I've been to many of them, and they're very good, but yet, I didn't know as to whether or not where the legal boundaries were, and I heard
Definitely have
both
the right to
ways.
speak, and if you needed more than the 3 minutes or 5 minutes is normally,
Yeah.
I'm sure he would allow you the additional time. I would always suggest that if he's looking for the city attorney's position, we always want to hear that. If it's another minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes, let's finish it. Unless it's duplicative, repetitive, whatever the terminology you want to use, everybody's standing up saying the same thing, then yeah, maybe not.
Okay, thank you.
I'd also like to point out that right now, it's just an allowed use. So this allows a process for that, where right now there isn't, as we just saw earlier tonight.
Only thing really restricting them right now, if they come in for an alcohol permit. But other than that, as Jenny said, it's an allowed use, and we don't have,
As long as it's within the height
yeah.
and is an allowed use or an accessory use, then our code doesn't stop it, doesn't refer to it.
So even in the previous list of things we just went through, we're adding a restriction by calling it out as a special exception requirement.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you
It
have to
wasn't
actually,
there
because that's
before.
what just happened, was we just had
You
this
just
come
saw it.
forward, and we're like, well, we can't do anything about it.
Right.
It's an allowed use.
Right. They don't have to go through a
an
special
allowed-
magistrate for it at all, anything.
Exactly.
This would
So-
throw another big hurdle in front of it
Yeah.
to be able to do that.
Yeah, because at this point, all is the alcohol process, where if they applied and they did include that, then we could bring up, well, in the minutes, you said X, Y, and Z that you wouldn't do that there. And then we'd say we wouldn't support that, because the intent, when it was approved, was that was not going to be a use.
But not all of them will apply for alcohol permit, just like what we saw earlier.
Right, sure.
So this is a way so that all of those uses, all of those open rooftop uses, and we'll reword it similar to what we were just talking about in the previous, that they would have to go through that hearing process. Everybody, the 300-foot notification as well. So that's an additional step to where, right now, we don't have that. It's just an allowed use if it's within the height. Exactly.
Right, so we're putting
So
something
trying to
there.
put something in place.
Great.
Okay. You got another, yeah, go ahead.
So when you have a wedding venue like that, they can have a vendor come in with a temporary alcohol permit. They can set up and serve their people up on the rooftop. So they don't have to go to the beverage department to go ahead and have an alcohol permit for that site. They can have one that has one, and you can set it up for temporary use. And that's what happens with a lot of wedding venues. So it's something, alcohol makes people talk louder, more noise, just something to consider.
All right, thank you.
Okay, and then just stop me if anyone has a concern, comment, like something else reworded, so.
I do have one question. If a project needs to be approved by, let's say, this board and a city commission, and they want to do a rooftop, let's say, would they have to go before the special magistrate and then come before these two boards?
You're saying if they
If it was something that came before us that also had a rooftop,
Oh, that it would also,
it was a site plan, or, just what we
maybe it
just
would
went
have to
through,
go
but they
through
wanted the rooftop.
special magistrate first, is that right?
It would either go through the special magistrate first, or would be a contingent, or condition of approval by the commission. It would have to be one or the other. I think we would always push for the special magistrate to review it first. Because if that doesn't address it, then they need to modify their plans before they come before the commission for final approval.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm imagining it like a variance.
Right.
'Cause just like tonight, they
it
applied
needed a
for a
variance,
variance.
right.
You don't see it until their variance is
Right.
granted, and then it goes.
Otherwise, it's a whole moot point.
Exactly.
Okay. Makes perfect sense. Okay.
Other than that, these are really just copy paste of what's in the code right now. Building site area requirements, very similar. There's some areas that it slightly changed just from Andrew and I looking at all the lots and what's already developed. And then if we want to go to setbacks. Any questions, comments on these? I know we've gone through them quite a bit, so
Yeah.
I don't want to waste everyone's night, but it is important. John's Pass
Well,
Village is
I
very
believe, and I'm
important,
trying to see
so-
what the green area is. That went down to 34, which was, I guess, per our recommendation and per the meetings that were there. And that is on, Pelican Lane. So Pelican Lane, so you'll no longer have to look for those huge buildings.
A lot of the low-intensity mixed use, a lot of those are the same setbacks. We can go to the height as well, but actually a lot of these setbacks on the R3 side, so the west side of Gulf Boulevard, are, I think, identical or very similar for the setbacks. And then the low-intensity mixed use, which is Pelican, is R3. So a lot of those setbacks are staying the same.
I think the only change with some like the low-intensity mixed use, we added, required a
Is that step back?
Step, right.
Yeah, because we don't want big blocky buildings, so we're requiring step backs.
Yeah, and trying to break that up. You see that in a lot of other activity centers and zoning throughout Pinellas County, well, everywhere. Just trying to break up that big block appearance.
So the front setback, let's say if you have two, if you're a property at a corner, you have two streets, would you have two fronts and two sides
On
and
the
no rear?
corner,
Or would you consider the secondary street to be a different value?
We have for some districts, we require a side setback if it has a side street. I think the traditional village, that's when we require setback. I just scroll back. So here we go. So in the traditional village, for example, if for lots of a side yard along a street, the side setback must be 10 feet along a street. So that's how we dealt, at least with that one. And elsewhere, they have side yard setbacks. That was just kind of down there because you have the buildings very close together, but we don't want them right up on the side street. I think it's
you say about
129.
the step back, it looks like it's only the primary facade
Yeah,
of the building.
yeah, that. Or I guess of a building facing or bordering a public right-of-way. So I guess if it was on a corner,
It would be both.
it'd be both, yeah. Looks like how we set it up elsewhere. Okay,
So it would be both sides.
yeah.
I've got a question in terms of, okay, the setbacks with transition and the rear yards, waterfront lots on Gulf Mexico, landward of country to the CCCL line.
Go back. Sorry about that.
What's the criteria of owning the property or going to the CCL line. I know you can build to the CCL line, but if your property is not to the CCL line, and I'm just looking at one of the properties on, let's see, well, okay, there's quite a few of them on the, well, by, what's this, 131st? Well, it's both ways. So 131st, they've got the property that it goes further, but the CCL line is inland. But then there's a couple of the properties north of 131st that don't own to the CCL line.
Should I pull up the property appraiser map? Because I can't visualize which properties we're talking about, so.
Well, I mean, I know we talked about that the CCL lines, some of the original buildings go past the CCL line.
Because it
And- but
moves.
that's- Right, it moves.
Okay, let me just pull up the
Yeah.
map, because I'm just not gonna.
Your deed and the plat is going to define what you own.
Here we go.
And if you own shy of the control line, then your setback is either 18 or 25 feet in the rear yard. If you own beyond the CCCL line, then your setback is based on where the control line is.
Yeah. So, and this, I pulled it up with the land use on it, too.
If you own beyond the coastal construction control line, then your rear yard, you can't go beyond it, right? Your setback
Is
is
that CCCL?
18 or 25 feet, but not beyond the coastal control line. Because some people own to the high water mark, and it could be 100 feet from the coastal construction control line, but you still can't build beyond that coastal construction control line.
And they don't get any density, because beyond, so the activity center boundary is cut along that coastal construction control line, and beyond that is preservation, which doesn't have any
No density.
So they don't gain it. So honestly, even if their property line goes all the way out here, they don't gain anything from that. The density intensity comes off of the actual buildable land.
Well, if you go up to 132nd Street, so a little bit further up there,
131st, 132nd, are you talking about this?
yeah, there's 3 properties right there.
4, yeah.
Well, I mean, three looks like residents that, according to what I see, the land is only 104 feet, but the CCL line is quite a bit further towards the Gulf.
Well, they have land use off of it. The activity center is cut along so it does have density intensity off of it. I don't know the history of why it doesn't show, because, well, I don't know what the surveys would say for these properties.
But the setback would be based on the lot line in that case.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, and if the rear yard line, let's say 20 feet, and the coastal construction control line is 15 feet, then you still have to set back from the property line, because that rear setback line should still apply.
Right.
But if the property line is way beyond the setback requirements, then coastal construction control line would be exactly where you want to put your building.
Right.
There's an old coastal construction line and new coastal construction line. And some of those houses were built where the old coastal construction line controlled at the time. So that's why you might see some variances.
It's based on what it is at the time of the application for the permit. No, it doesn't matter what it was 100 years ago. It matters what it is today when they come in for a permit. So if they're looking for a permit, I mean, it doesn't matter what we're doing now. Like, we can't control the control line, and we can't make anybody move a building. But if a new permit is applied for, these are the setbacks that are in place based on that day's coastal construction control line location, and the setbacks relative to the lot line.
Okay, well.
All right?
Great.
Where else you going?
Thank you.
We'll be sending this off to Ford Pinellas, because they're required to review any land development regulation.
Okay.
And then you can just go through really quickly in case if there's any other comments that pops into your head. This is the densities. Just
We've
reflects.
already beat those to death pretty good.
I know. Reflects what's in the special area plan. And then the height
Getting down that road.
changes from last time.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you,
The
Andrew.
low-intensity mixed use is 34 feet. I think that might be the only, but I think we changed that
Prior to,
prior to this, so.
let's see.
And,
FARs haven't changed.
Right.
yeah, these are all from the special area plan. so.
Everything's basically copy paste from the special area plan.
Right.
Alternative temporary lodging use, how to use it. Nothing's changed in that. We'll put in these figure numbers, not XX. And then the design standards and guidelines. Really no changes from last time. So what Andrew was saying, this has to go to Ford Pinellas. We'll also have Mr. Trask review this. And then I think that's about it. We'll see if we get any comments from Ford Pinellas. And then bring that back.
Yep.
Okay,
That's all that we have.
good. Everybody good?
If you have any other questions or comments, just make sure to email us so we can do
Okay.
that before we bring it for public hearing.
All right, I like it. Okay. So that covered that little topic. We had master plan as item C. What do you got there?
Oh, sorry, I forgot that we had that. It's been a long night. So
Not
we had our
kidding.
first master plan, it was just an update. We had our first master plan workshop.
Oh, let me go on the webs. I can
Yes,
show.
Andrew can show, this is the website and the interactive map. It's too late for Andrew, for us. Been a long
There we
day.
go. So we have a website and an interactive map that Kimley Horn made for us that that the public can also you can. I linked it to. So you have a full-size page also, a little easier to see it. So basically, the public is able to comment on the map, and
Wow.
Kimley Horn will send us like a document of all the comments. But we have comment related for beautification, placemaking, business development, housing, infrastructure and resiliency, other parks and rec, and public space, safety, and transportation mobility. So any comments, things you like, any concerns, it's important to put it on this map. So, because right now we're in the really early stages of the master plan where they're doing like data collection type stuff. So this is part of that.
And then we'll let everyone know the next workshop. We don't have a date set yet.
And all the previous workshop for the presentation that Kimley Horn did last week, it's on the website. And then, okay, we have that, there were worksheets, and then the previous, the original, the 2002 master plan too. So just wanted to make everyone aware that the website's public, all this information's available, and make sure to go on the public comment map and put some comments down.
And
Thank you.
spread the news. Let all your neighbors know. So
Excellent.
we want a lot of public input.
Yeah, we definitely need it. When we did it back in 2002, there was lots. This room was full, a lot, over the new master plan. So it was good times. Not sure whatever happened to it officially. Sort of went off the cliff, but here we are. So got a crack team on it, and we'll get her dialed in. So I appreciate all your efforts. Thank you. All right, any questions on any other items? Anything else we need to bring up for the good of the nation? We're good? All right, so our next meeting is going to be August 5th here, 6 p.m. And that looks like it wraps it up at about 8:49. Thank you. The meeting's adjourned.